For more on the markets, we cross to Nompumelelo Siziba at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Good afternoon, Nompumelelo. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Nzinga. Well, the all-share index is currently trading in negative territory, and European markets are trading up at the moment. The local currency has lost a little bit of steam relative to the US dollar. It's now trading firmly above a 12 against the US dollar. I say firmly, around 12.02 against the greenback at the moment. Oil prices remain elevated, although traders did take some profits a little bit off the table. That price hit about $74.75 a barrel yesterday, the highest it's been in 3 years, nearly 4 years, and so there's been a little bit of profit taking there, but it's still hovering around $73 a barrel. There's what they call a little bit of a risk premium in there because there are a lot of moving parts in the Middle East, lots of threats and concerns, so it's still quite elevated and could potentially mean more higher oil prices, higher fuel prices for us here in South Africa. Of course, that's dependent on what happens with the local currency. And then today in Europe, Steinhoff has its annual general meeting. That means that the board of Steinhoff and shareholders will get to meet each other and talk face to face for the first time since all the scandal of the irregular accounting was announced in December. That particular stock has lost 95% of its value. And of course, shareholders wanting answers with talk of them pursuing some of the banks that helped Steinhoff to list in Europe in 2015. Let's take a look at the indicators. I'm joined by Maudi Lenswane. He's from Lahuma Capital. Thanks for joining us, sir, as always.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. So, how would you characterize this week in global markets? Is there more a shift to looking at market fundamentals, that is corporate earnings, rather than, geopolitical concerns on the margins?
Yeah, look, I think you've summed it up very well. I mean, even despite the fact that we had all those geopolitical tensions still lingering in the system, we had the markets, perform very well. We were up the past 2 days, of course, with the exception of today, but the past 2 days we've been up, even despite all those geopolitical tensions that you mentioned. That tells you that I think the market is taking it with a pinch of salt. We've had the reports or the statements out from Donald Trump that is not going to be proceeding with further sanctions against Russia. And I think those are some of the factors that are helping to alleviate some of the fears that we could potentially see a little bit of a tension escalating into, a possible war. We still have the trade war issues between China and the US, but those as well seems to have subsided. So I think those are a number of factors that help the market to do much better this week. And of course, combine the fact that we've got those earnings coming through as well. We've had Ericsson this morning. That's why you've got the European session looking all positive. I think Ericsson is trading around 16%. Very, very positive trading update or the results rather from them.
That's a very good result indeed. And it's been a very positive week for data here in South Africa. Inflation coming in lower than expected at 3.8% year on year for March. And then February retail sales nearly 5% year on year for February. And of course, the president's initiative to hunt down lots of foreign direct investment. All very positive for sentiment. Does this explain why we've seen the rand sort of resist around the 12 against the US dollar level? It hasn't really weakened that much beyond there.
No, it certainly did. I mean, I think the rand has been very strong. We all know after the changes that we've had politically. So that has been the very strongest support for the rand. But also, these events that have unfolded, the fact that we've had all those positive numbers, economic data coming through, this positive announcement, for that investment team that has been put together by the president, put together primarily to focus on ensuring that we attract that FDI. For a very long time, it had been dwindling. We have been under a lot of pressure. We've seen investors, offshore investors, not investing in our country for the longest of time. And now if we begin to see the change and the change of that and begin to see money coming into the country, but not only from outside, but we also need to begin to see the South Africans, the South Africans, invest in the economy. So I think that will be very positive, and also very positive for the rand going forward.
Indeed. And then, as I mentioned in my introduction, Steinhoff, they're having their annual general meeting. Now we know, everybody knows, the viewers know that they haven't put out these results for 2017, and they need to restate the results for 2016 and 2015, maybe even beyond that. So given that, what can you expect them to talk about at the AGM? Obviously, shareholders are angry. Some of them have held on to their shares, and they've lost 95% of their value. What answers can they get from the board at this point? I expect
fist fighting. A lot of fighting, because you can understand the shareholders are very unhappy with what unfolded over the past 4 months, since we discovered that there's some holes in the irregularities in the financials of Steinhoff. I mean, between the last meeting when they met, the Steinhoff was worth 20 billion euros. Today, Steinhoff is worth around 1 billion. So that tells you how much value it has lost, and they will be demanding answers with regards to what changes they've first of all, I mean, what really happened. And I don't think they'll be able to get much with regards to what happened in terms of the numbers. We still don't know, but I think they will want to know what sort of measures have been put in place from a corporate governance perspective, and also just in terms of the investigation. How far are we with the investigations of what happened? I think those are the things that the shareholders will demand. Whether they'll get answers to most of them, we don't know.
Do you think, I mean, a group of Dutch investors have decided that they're going to pursue the banks who helped Steinhoff to list on the stock exchange? ABSA is one of those banks, and they've come out and said, look, we don't have a case to answer. Do you think that those guys, the shareholders, are clutching at straws? Yeah, look,
I mean, in this difficult time, I think they're just looking everywhere where they can try and salvage some of the lost value. They will have cases, they'll have a strong case against some of these institutions, some of these banks, or rather the auditors. But I think they'll not have a case against some of them.
Unfortunately, I have to interject there. We have to cross back to studio.